Welcome back to East Haven County, where we are just about ready to continue working on the downtown core of Fort John after having worked on expanding our economy and trade. But before we do that, I'm going to test some ideas I have in an attempt to add a really simple but still realistic, all-new, fully zoned industrial area, with the goal of adding at least 1,500 new jobs to our economy. Now, two things right before we dive in. First up, you still have time to make a suggestion for what we should consider developing on this empty lot in the inner city Coleridge neighborhood of Fort John. So if you've got a suggestion, fire away in the comments. As for the second thing, well, it's just a super neutral reminder to like this video if you enjoy my content, as it really does help. Thank you. Alright, so to elaborate on my plan just a little bit, my hopes are that the addition of at least 1,500 new, primarily industrial jobs is going to comfortably bring us just below 10% unemployment. And then if we do a bit of additional tax incentives for the office demand, we might be able to just bump that up a bit so that when we move into downtown a little later in the episode, we'll have plenty of additional office demand to build with. Because obviously we can't really use our industrial demand for anything in here. So just to start, since we have such a healthy economy, we are going to do a pretty substantial office incentives program here, bring all four commerce types down to about 8%. That should see our office demand starting to increase as taxes will be added as a positive. So we're basically creating a more pro-business environment, so to speak, and that didn't really cut that much into our overall profits. Anyways, interestingly, the new industrial district will actually be placed out here on the Cape Rose Island. Or maybe we're gonna separate this part to create its own little island. We're gonna see how that all pans out with the terraforming. I want it to look super interesting, even though it's gonna be all zoned. So one little thing to note before we begin, I'm actually gonna use a slightly customized version of the industrial vanilla zone. I basically just jumped into the editor, selected most of the level 1 assets from the industrial zone, cloned them over and removed the chimneys and just made a zone with that. One additional detail though, with no chimneys, I removed all the air pollution as well as the ground pollution, because this is mainly just, you know, light manufacturing or warehouse units. So there's still noise pollution, plenty of noise pollution, but not the other two types of pollution. And a massive shout out to Tygon for helping me with some of the finer details of creating these zones. And since we are on the topic of Tygon, I'm going to use one of their custom freight yards, one of these, probably the general one, because it should be pretty easy to bring our freight rail from this island over here as well. We don't need any boat passage clearance here. We can just do a low-hanging bridge. And as soon as trains enter this stretch and moves on to the port, it's completely separated from our passenger lines, so we can complicate this further. That was a lot of talk without any type of progress, so we'll start immediately with a bit of terraforming. And I kind of want to let these two hills stick around and not just make everything super flat and boring. And I'm just gonna grab a bit of extra land, do a bit of land reclamation from this bay area here so that we can bring this industry a little closer to this, kind of get it in the same view. And I also do kind of want to separate this industrial area from the bulk of Cape Rose, probably by adding in like an inlet or a small bay here. So I'm just gonna do that. We're gonna do it in a super quick fashion, nothing fancy. Maybe like a few islands or two, and then just a little smoothing and let the water enter this place. It's just to provide a bit of a geographical barrier that could explain why industry was built here in the first place, because Cape Rose, as we all know, is primarily a vacation destination, or, you know, somewhere where you expect to live a quiet suburban life. As far as simple terraforming go, I think this will suit our needs for now. We'll need more detailing, obviously. Now let's get some main roads to cut through this new industrial area, and I think I'm gonna utilize my wide alleyway once more. It just seems like 18-wheelers really love this road because it has a wide configuration, so it makes it very easy for them to handle. And there are quite sizable vehicles on these roads when they have to enter and exit industrial lots. And I kind of just want one road to go parallel to the hillside here, probably a little further even. And then I'm going to just randomly click some snapping options because I messed this up each and every time. And then we're just going to go straight down in a 90-degree angle, and I'll get one additional of these wide roads here alongside the hill on the other side of it. Actually, let's just make it a little more interesting by breaking this up. So as we reach about this point here, we're going to move down, and then I'm just going to do something a little different here. So I'm going to just bring this out just so I can follow the guidelines, and then I'm just going to make sure that we move a little closer to the hill. Yeah, I think that looks maybe a little better. We'll use manipulation mode to maybe just make this bend here a little more manageable. Now that we are on the topic of easy trucking, let's just get a super easy connection to about here and then move down. I don't want to make the road layout too elaborate right now because I need to get the train station, the freight station in place pretty early on. It's going to be a pain to kind of retrofit it, but I think I'm going to fit it here. So slightly inlands, and then this is going to be more port oriented. We'll have a couple of ship props here and make that look a little interesting as well. But we probably just need to get the freight station in place now so that we can bring the freight rail across. So since we're going for a light manufacturing / warehouse vibe, I don't want to go for like a specialized type of industry. So we're just going to grab this general freight yard, unelectrified of course, and just gonna kind of get that connected. Probably just around here. And that looks pretty nice right from the get-go, and it's of course ready to handle cargo. So for the connection out here, I've upgraded these tracks to the unelectrified ones that I once again grabbed from the Tygon pack. And I just need a little connection now. So let's just see, I'm gonna grab these here and do something simple here. I kind of want to find a middle ground. Actually, let's just go for this. Just gonna pause. I need to bring utilities into this area, obviously. But the first thing I want to do is simply just get across here. Okay, the elevation is 1.4% up to these tracks, which is perfectly fine for even pretty heavy freight. So let's just go across the body of water here and just see how smooth we can make this transition. Something like this. And I just want to make sure that this is actually a bridge segment. Just like that. And potentially probably just elevate it a little bit because that seems fairly low. It's almost like this part of the shoreline is actually at a lower elevation. Oh yeah, it definitely is. So I think I'm just gonna use move it to grab at least these nodes and just kind of... There you go. That looks fairly good. Now, it's not strictly necessary to have a road flank this side of the train yard, but the design of it, the way it's detailed, I think it kind of lends itself to that. So we're just gonna grab a vanilla alley and we'll just move real close to the station here. Just connect it up right like that, and we'll move through, and then probably just grab this good old here and move across as well. I probably also need to place this massive SwitchCon electric appliance factory pretty early on, just given the size of it. So I'm thinking we have a bit of a spot here where I can just kind of sneak that in, and then I'll see where I can make room for the massive surface parking lot we're going to attach to it. Additionally, I kind of want a few extra train tracks around this part here. So I need to make room for those as well. So I think we'll just, if we bring this road through here so that we can zone on this side at least, then I am going to go ahead and grab some of my, let's see, we can steal some rail yard tracks from out here, I think. Oh yeah, just gonna steal this one. And then we'll move back here and we're just gonna do completely manual alignment here. Manual, I mean without snapping, is what I'm trying to convey. Just bring these real close to each other. Place them at a bit of a distance, then I'll connect the double up. And then I'll use move it just to bring them very, very close. But for now, we are just gonna need the, let's see, the regular 2-lane track, non-electrified. So I am going to need some complex curvature to get this right. I wonder if we can cross straight through this one. Is that even possible? I mean, I guess it kind of is. I'm just gonna do that to avoid having too complicated of a crossing here. And then with manipulation mode, I'm going to try and just make this a little smoother, and that actually worked fairly well. So pretty happy with that. And then I think we're gonna try our hand at a, actually I am probably just gonna quote unquote have to freeform this whole thing. So right as we cross the road here, I need a complex curve to be able to move into this one. I'm gonna try and enable Anarchy, and hopefully I don't mess anything up too much at least. And then this one should be fairly simple. There you go. And then, as I mentioned, we'll grab move it, just a normal selection mode, grab these two big nodes and try to squeeze these in together. Something like that. Maybe a little adjustment here with manipulation mode. Things are looking a little weird. Bring these two a little more in line. Perfect. And while probably not strictly necessary, I'm gonna try to see if I can loop my rail yard here for once. And I don't know how this, wow, that connection looks super crazy, but I mean, I guess I could do it crazy once in a while. And this might be one of those rail yards where if you're like me and love trains and train infrastructure, but you don't really know or stress about all the realistic rules, you're gonna love this. But if you actually know about the rules and stuff like that, you might hate this. But it is what it is, and I think I crashed 5 times trying to manipulate this with Move It. And I don't blame that on Move It or the game, but just the fact that I was really trying to squeeze some nodes into place where they probably shouldn't be. So I'm kind of testing like the physics limits of the game, I guess. So I'm not going to touch it anymore for now, but I'm going to really look forward to detailing this up with train cars. Anyways, moving on. We're just about ready to start a zoning, but we obviously need utility connection, but more importantly, we need an actual physical connection to the road layout. We have the Applegate Highway here, which I think I'm gonna rename the Cape Rose Pikeway, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Because down here we have the Cape Rose Express, which is about 5 kilometers, moves all the way into Chowder Bay. Anyways, I want to create like a complex, cool connection here. So I think I'm actually just going to delete a few of these stretches here, and then we're going to try and do something a little weird, because I just love weird stuff. So let's grab the 2-lane one-way highway, and we'll add a segment right here. And then I think we're gonna add a segment right about here as well. And then we'll see if am I gonna turn this into sort of a weird roundabout thingy? Oh yeah, we're definitely doing something weird now. Anyways, I would love an entrance way into this area that is very, very easy to use and is one-way direction. So we're just gonna add this in. We'll just add it as a straight segment. Then we're going to flip the direction. And then we are going to try and add a seamless connection, just like that. And then this section here, we are going to do the opposite thing. I just kind of need to, let's see, I'm just going to grab this road here and just connect that up so that we have a bit more zoning capabilities here. Then we'll remove this stretch and we are going to grab the highway segment we had in use. And just gonna move through here and hopefully I can make the transition here look a little smoother. But I'm actually gonna change a thing or two because I kind of want this one to kind of hit the curve here. So we are going to change that. So what I mean by that is I'm gonna add a few extra nodes here. We'll delete this segment. We'll use the continuous tool to kind of bring this one a little closer in. 90 degrees, and then hopefully this is going to be a little more seamless the way we connect to this road here. And I might as well just make a little upgrade to the Cape Rose Pike way, and let's see how this looks. So this one should be fairly easy, just like that. And then this one, can I make this look good? Like this. I can. I have decided that I can. Although this is looking very complex, I'll give you that. And I think why not just kind of continue this I mean, do we really need this to... Actually, I'm just gonna let that stay and just kind of continue that for now. If anything, it adds a bit of extra complexity, and I'm just in a mood where everything has to be super complex currently. All the infrastructure, all the industry, everything, and this is just fun to look at. And I think this is gonna function fairly well as well, if I'm being honest. But once again, just like with trains, I love complicated highway infrastructure, but I know nothing of the rules. Anyways, I think we need to make the connection here from the Cape Rose Express to the Cape Rose Pikeway a little more substantial as well. I want the right turn here to be easier to make, to kind of handle some of the heavy cargo traffic I am expecting here at least. So let's just see, we'll upgrade this to a 3-lane segment. And then I think we are gonna upgrade this as well. Let's see. I think we might as well just have this be 2 lanes moving up here for the entire stretch, at least from around here. And then we're going to connect a slip lane into this segment, I think. Yeah, so if we do this upgrade and we grab a manipulation mode with move it just to make this transition a lot smoother, then we can kind of move the slip lane in here and potentially make that look cool as well. So we'll branch off from about here at 178. I think that's fine. And then I'm gonna see if I can actually make this make sense. Oh, I misclicked. So that's not gonna make sense, that's for sure. Gonna enable Anarchy, because the game forces me to do so. And we're gonna click, and that actually looks fairly cool, I'd say. We're gonna move our utilities underneath the Cape Rose Pikeway, so that we can get good supply out to our industrial area. This one didn't connect for whatever reason, it does now. And then as far as power lines, let's see, I actually have elevated power lines here, which I think I'm gonna prefer to use. I love the look of these, so I'm just gonna elevate by by 10, and then we're just gonna move across the road here, and we're just gonna follow the Cape Rose Pikeway all the way out to the new industrial zone. And I guess since we actually kept this segment of the Cape Rose Pikeway, eventually we could move across and onto this island and maybe just turn this into an industrial hillscape as well, because I mean, there's not much recreational value out here now that we expect quite a bit of freight rail traffic at this junction. So yeah. Now, of course, we need a proper district to designate this entire area so that we can keep tabs on just how much development we're seeing and how much it contributes to our economy. And I think I'm gonna call it Forge Point. Sounds fairly industrial. I didn't want to go with Cape Forge because we are on Cape Rose actually. Anyways, we already have 261 jobs out here between the SwitchCon factory and the 16 positions offered by the small diesel freight yard here. But things are hopefully gonna look much better as we start adding in more zoning. And I think before we do that though, I kind of have to complete a few additional segments of the road layout here, because there just isn't all that much zonable space right now, because we do want to keep the hills here as kind of like, you know, a natural boundary and a bit of a, I guess something that just adds a little character here in Forge Point. So we're just going to add some very basic roads so that we get a little more zonable space. And we'll see how it goes with zoning these areas, because obviously whenever we have non-grids, then zoning starts to look, you know, fairly interesting. But I think we'll manage. I really do think we will manage if we play our cards right. And yeah, just getting the road layout a little more complex is also just going to add a lot of character. Now, I think we should start zoning. I'm going to reserve this major lot here for SwitchCon parking, which is certainly going to look beautiful, I imagine. But we've got a bit of terraforming here. We just need to get a hold of, there we go, something like that. Now, I did say I want to add some parking with these new parking lot roads. So I think I'm going to grab the alley versions of these, especially these slightly narrow ones where you only have one lane of parking. So if we do something like this and just kind of break that up, then that is going to add a bit of interest. We are also going to add the two-way version, because then we can move really close to these tracks here, and that's going to be a confined parking lot. Oh, that actually connects to the train tracks. I wouldn't want that, so I'm just gonna place that and then probably just gonna grab the node here and drag it instead. Don't want to connect to the train tracks. That's gonna cause a host of issues down the line, I imagine. But this is an interesting way just to get a bit of an additional look to the parking we're creating. We're gonna add a bit out here as well, I think. Just upgrade this to a lane segment so it doesn't look super weird. Because if we have a mixture of these parking lot roads with the actual parking lots, of which we have quite a few now with the new Detailers 2 patch, I think that's gonna look fairly nice actually. So I'll just be adding plenty of surface parking out here. I know this can seem kind of intuitive given the fact that I also need this area to be highly functional and add a bunch of jobs to our economy. But I'm not gonna sacrifice trying to get a bit of extra realism in here just to squeeze a few more jobs out, because I mean we have plenty of space for jobs in other places as well. And don't worry, we're gonna work on downtown whether I manage to create 1,500 jobs out here or not, because our office demand has skyrocketed due to our tax incentives. So if anything, we can just add a few office skyscrapers to downtown before we start adding in some residential, and that's going to help with the job situation. Let's try this new zone out and see how it's all going to look. So I'm just gonna zone, let's see, we'll move close but not all the way out to the shoreline here. Just gonna zone all this up, and all this up. I don't think I have enough variety in this zone, this quote-unquote custom zone, to actually make all this look nice. So we'll see how this actually pans out. But we should have the demand for everything to start actually growing. I say that, but I may have actually overestimated just how much industrial demand we had out here. I wouldn't mind adding maybe a tiny bit of offices actually, because it is a, you know, light manufacturing warehousey district, as I mentioned. So it should be possible to also add a bit of low density offices just to kind of, you know, make it look a little more diverse. And I think it's fairly realistic to have that as well. So let's see, do I have a bit of space here for... Actually, I should probably reserve that for the monster parking lots I'm gonna be building. And everything seems to be developing now. Industrial demand is rebounding, so there's plenty of that. And we are 6 jobs short of the 1500 goal. Oh man, but I mean, this should be a fairly simple fix because you can kind of see the deficiencies in the custom zone right here. I simply don't have a 2x4 or a 2x2 within this custom zone. So adding a bit of office to that should bump us across the magnificent, the holy 1500 that I kind of went for. And there's a bit of repetition out here as well, which I don't like. So I'm going to rezone this as office. And I think I'm going to rezone this as low density commercial. Hopefully that's going to fit in all right. Alternatively, if it isn't, I could just use the regular normal industrial zone, right? Because that's going to have a bit of a higher variety of assets. But generally, I'm very happy with the overall aesthetics of this area. They have this warehouse light industrial feel, and there are no chimneys, importantly. There is one to the SwitchCon building, which I'm pretty sure I can remove. But honestly, I don't really mind it being attached to the major factory here. I think that's just fine. Now, something I want to do now is create the massive parking lot that is going to dominate this lot here. Or this block rather. So I think I'm just gonna flatten everything because that's definitely what they do, and then ensure I have ample connection through just a couple of alleyways that just kind of cut around the building. We'll move all the way out here and to about this point, and then just a straight connection right down there, and all of this is gonna be parking. So let's see how this is actually going to look. I'm gonna bring this out here, I think, and bring it down here. Then we'll get a connection going into this. Just a regular one like that. We'll just connect this up. I'll add a bit of complexity for the sake of complexity. You guys know how I am. And then let's see, I think... How are we gonna do this? I think we'll have I think we'll just have another alley from this point cutting down here and then connecting to this. So this should be possible with all snapping options on. Hopefully I can kind of snap to the right thing. Actually, not really, but I think that's fine. Then I'm going to grab these one-way perpendicular parking alleys, and we're gonna move in opposite directions on every second one. Gonna enable upgrade, make sure we don't have any snapping on, and then I also have the opportunity to just flip the directions. But I can certainly change their direction and just do a bit of manipulation, just like that. I'm gonna bring a road, the alley here, right through it, just to kind of break it up a little bit and see if all these segments look all right. I think they do. And that is one massive parking lot, although it's not actually too bad. Just look at how much space there is in between these roads. Not even sure how realistic that is, but they certainly had the space for it. I think I'm just gonna add a few trees and bushes in between. So yeah, as far as a major industrial parking lot goes, this is actually one of the nicer ones. Although I will say that I think the description as well as the overall aesthetic of this SwitchCon building kind of makes me believe that it's like a combination of industrial jobs and more like office or, you know, high-tech engineering jobs. And in that case, I think it's more fitting that the parking lot is maybe a little more nicer, or maybe I'm just overthinking the whole thing. That's possible as well, but I kind of like how this looks. And just consider how easy and quick this was to create. These roads are just amazing. And trust me, the irony of rezoning something to get a bit more asset diversity, just for the total job count to actually fall, is not lost on me. But I'm gonna make up for it because I think we do have a little more space for just a little more industry. Maybe even the dairy house, which I think adds like 80 or 90 jobs or something. So I'm gonna grab this and I'm just gonna place it out here. I think that's a fitting location, and of course we're gonna add some juicy parking with the parking lots roads as well. Just get that placed, and that adds 85 additional positions. So yay, we made the home stretch. We might even add a bit more, but I'm just gonna add a quick parking lot to this one. I guess in hindsight, maybe this is just a little much. So if we kind of just maybe remove these segments here, just like that, we get a bit of extra space for zoning, which is never bad. Although I really don't want zoning alongside these, so maybe a little gravel path of some sort, or this small one is all we need to just add a bit of extra zoning tiles to Franklin Lane. Yoink. And with such a little hill that is generally inaccessible for like recreational purposes due to it being like in the middle of Forge Point, I figure a radio mast here might actually be a good idea, also since we don't really have all that great internet out here on Cape Rose. And I know this is on the like far western side of the island and all, so it's definitely not ideal, but even still, I think it could look pretty cool up here. It actually does. So we're just gonna go for a really simple gravel road, I think. Probably gonna cover it up with some stains and decals as well. I'm gonna try and adhere to some contour lines here, so I have to kind of move down here alongside the hill and just do a sharp connection. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm just gonna add a bunch of trees and bushes out here for now, because I don't want to detail this up yet. It was just meant to be a very functional area that doesn't look like a complete eyesore, but actually looks alright and has the potential for plenty of detailing in the future. And then we are actually just gonna move straight to downtown, because I'm happy to say that we've pretty much achieved the goal I set out to do. It did take a little while, and this area is less simple than my initial plans, but I think it's all worth it. Anyways, the main point is we are well beyond, or below, sorry, 9% unemployment now, so we should jump straight to downtown. So to give a little update on downtown Fort John and where we left off, I would say about half the potential space is currently occupied, which leaves us with a lot of potential for further development. Although there are a few things I kind of want to consider, or reserve rather. One is that we don't actually have a dedicated park in downtown yet. We have, I guess this kind of counts next to the train station, but this was also a bit of a temporary, very quick measure. But otherwise you have to venture out into Windsor, or more specifically the 5 Point district of Windsor, where we have Oak Park here. And while I think that's a very successful, nice recreational space, I do want to continue reserving this central lot as Central Park. So this is going to be a real recreational space in the very heart of downtown. Additionally, we probably need a bit of surface parking in here. Because even the densest and most urbanized US downtowns have surface parking lots. I'm pretty sure we can find some even within the boundaries of Manhattan if we look closely enough. And this isn't meant to be Manhattan. It's meant to be a dense, highly desirable place inspired by Boston. but we probably need just a bit of surface parking. So I need to keep that in mind as well. Anyways, the overall makeup of downtown Fort John is actually very residential. So usually you have US downtowns that have a very high percentage of office jobs compared to the population. In this case, it's kind of flipped around. There's almost 4,000 jobs in downtown, which isn't bad, but the population is more than 6,000, which is great. And we can actually kind of see the zoning map for this. So if we have a look at our residential map view here, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. The majority of the high-rises in downtown Fort John, thus far at least, are all housing units, which is great. That's what makes it such a bustling place, of course. And then if we switch to office, it's much smaller. But now that we have an insane office demand due to our tax incentives, I think a good place to start is to get a few more office towers placed in here. Now, something I'm trying to be mindful about is that I don't want the towers in Fort John to be any taller than they currently are. So these two towers here kind of top off the current skyline. And this is important because it actually does reduce the amount of high-rises we can use, because quite a few actually go beyond this height limit. Something we can do to kind of get a better idea of what we haven't placed is to click this extra filter where we kind of narrow down what have we currently placed on the map. And I can expect all of these to have been placed in this general area because this is the only high-rise downtown we have. So at least something I can see is that we don't have any office towers that are 4 tiles wide. So if I just start by filtering for that, that is going to help me select what I need. Why this doesn't make any sense? Oh yeah, sorry, I need to deselect this one, of course. Anyways, we can assume that I haven't used any of these, at least not these versions. There are some versions where I might just have used a different lot size, so that's always something to keep in mind. But I haven't used this building, for instance. Actually, no, that's not the same. Oh, very close, huh? I haven't used this building, so I might just try to get that in place. The lot size is pretty big, but we can delete a lot of the footprint down there with the better Bulldozer mod, so that's not like a huge concern for me. And we have a corner here where this one might just be a decent fit. So I'm just gonna try and align that and get that placed. Then we'll move in with better Bulldozer and just get rid of a ton of stuff. I don't want anything to poke into the street, at least. There's a few light poles there, but otherwise this seems to work fairly well. How much did that add? 216 jobs, not too bad. And I actually just moved it a little and turned it by 90 degrees because I pretty much messed up. This one is not unique to Fort John. I placed the same building over here many episodes ago, but I think by just having it as a different color and turning it so that it's at a 90-degree angle to this one, the repetition isn't at all as obvious at all. One thing to note is I went through all of these of different zoning sizes, and honestly, I don't really want to add any more towers to Fort John Skyline. I mean, in the future, if the city grows really, really big, it might warrant an entirely new construction boom of high-rises, but generally, I'm just very, very, very happy with the current skyline. So I think that's going to be the final tower for now. What we're going to venture into trying instead is to place some medium density offices. Now, these are basically just the high density commercial assets repurposed as offices. That's the only difference. So they just provide office jobs instead. So you could as well just place these. I just think it's cool that someone on the PDX mods actually went ahead and created this medium density conversion, because I kind of just want to place offices currently. We're gonna start with this beautiful, beautiful North American 2x4. Get that placed on this corner. And I mean, okay, we'll keep the signage for now. It's a little Times Square vibey, maybe a little too much, but yeah, I may remove that. And I'm really starting to feel this very small, tightly knit New England inspired street grid we've got going, because it's some Pretty odd camera angles I'm using to try and squeeze these buildings into place here, make them look well integrated, wall-to-wall connections. Things are just getting super dense with all these small alleyways running around. Very cool. I think the final little addition we're gonna do is I'm gonna try and clone this building here and then place it, kind of stitching it together and placing it at a 90-degree angle, because there is a bit of a space in between the mixed-use building on the other corner, as you guys can probably see. So I think it would make sense for this skyscraper to initially have been built with a bit of a better plan for how to maximize its space. And I think I'm just gonna grab the color scheme from this one and place that over. And let's see, I want to be careful with, actually I'm just gonna get rid of all the signage on both of these, and it more or less looks like a single tower. And obviously that added an additional, let's see, 90 jobs, which really isn't all that much. That is so unrealistic for a tower like this. Anyways, that rounds up the amount of office jobs we'll be adding, because I still need more residential, especially mixed use as well. Let's take a look at what that changed. So we added around 800 jobs, give or take, which I think is very, very nice. That brings the total of this episode to way more than 2,000, because what did Forge Point end on? 1,600, not bad. And I know I mentioned that even Boston has some surface parking, but it's actually exceptionally little, like 6% of the central city. I don't know what that is defined as. Oh, it's probably within this red area here is surface parking, or off-street parking rather. But if we're being realistic, if I zoom in a bit, this is the actual downtown core of Boston, and there's very little parking. In fact, we can see the majority of it through the Will Street parking lot right here. And then if we move down Will Street and through Wendell Street, we'll see this little surface parking lot here. So yeah, that's not a whole lot, which is great. We'll use that as an example and probably see if I can like fit in one of the small parking garages or something in Fort John, but otherwise not really stress about surface parking, because realistically Fort John is, I don't know if it's actually denser than Boston, but it's definitely on a more restricted space, you know, geographically. So it's a smaller downtown, it's more compressed. But this means in practical terms for Fort John is I'm gonna try and place this small parking building we just received with the second details patch. There's a pretty good place right behind the hotel we placed down a couple of episodes ago, where I think this is a good fit. And then maybe we're gonna place a couple of like surface parking lots, and might as well just be some of these new fancy ones that are like canopy covered or has small solar panels. And obviously I need to find a location for it. So we can just assume that an area like this, for instance, is a place where we can add some of this parking in here. It's not great land usage at all, but I also need some land usage that just isn't great. So I'm just gonna get that placed. And I already kind of regret that, because that's not only is it a surface parking lot, but for a parking lot, it's also very, very low density. Like it didn't have a lot of parking spaces. And at the very least, I imagine that if we have parking at such a central location in downtown Fort John, it's at least going to be very, you know, it's going to be dense. So placing this modest one down and using the Better Bulldozer mod to just maybe clean up a few aspects as well as from the neighboring buildings so we don't have any clipping, that's probably more like it. And then we might even be able to squeeze this long parking lot in here between these blocks here and just get that real close. It's not going to be perfectly attuned to the surrounding buildings, but I think we're getting pretty close here. Once again, Better Bulldozer just to get rid of a few sub-elements so that we don't have too much clipping going on. And in here, where it kind of clips into a building or two, well, I mean, you guys know the deal, right? We're just gonna grab a couple of these bad boys and just make this a very leafy green place. To wrap that up, and since I do want to use one of these solar panel covered parking lots, I figure we might just squeeze that in right next to the old French school. So just aligning that with Anarchy, moving it real close, and I'm gonna have it face the lane on the back side, because there's plenty of street parking here alongside Barlow Street. And I think that's pretty much it for the surface parking. The rest is going to be housing, mixed use, residential, probably some commercial as well, and probably from a host of different themes and maybe in region packs. Alright, so I actually think we've managed to place all the buildings that are going to be in the current iteration of the Fort John downtown. And the reason I say current is that we still haven't exploited the Johns Bay at all. Like, we have a waterfront here that is just completely unused because I haven't gotten that far yet. But also, and importantly, we're gonna have like some old dockyards and some old piers here surrounding the bay. Because it's probably more natural that since the downtown area is where the city was initially settled, then this landing here at the bay is, you know, this is the natural harbor that attracted the settlers in the first place. So we need old industry here, the first port that the city had basically when it was established, you know, almost 400 years ago. Which means that the port of Fort John on this side of the island is something that was added a little later. So as the city really started growing rapidly, there was a recognition that heavy industry, heavy port industry should probably not be right in downtown. So this area started developing a couple of decades later. And of course, now it's the primary port because the old port we'll be building in here, much of that has been redeveloped into, you know, recreational space, parks, maybe sports arenas, modern, hipster-friendly, quote-unquote luxury developments, all that good stuff. Overall, I'm very happy with how the downtown has shaped up. We've used buildings across pretty much all densities, and we have some fun old areas here. Like, we have some small alleys where we have some of the original row housing that might be 300 years old, maybe even older. And I just think it makes everything look a lot more organic. And generally, going for this type of road layout initially, of course, it takes a lot of additional time to actually build out the downtown because I've pretty much hand-placed every single building. But the final result is much more organic, and I think it really has that New England vibe to it. Now, obviously, we haven't really done any detailing yet, so we're gonna do some proper detailing of downtown a little later because I pretty much just want Fort John to be a very functional city before we venture too heavy into the detailing. But there's actually one little detailing thing that I've been wanting to try for a while. It's something I did extensively in City Skylines 1, and I always found it super fun and the final look very, very interesting. And it's pretty much turning one of the skyscrapers here into an ongoing construction project, using some cranes and some scaffolding. Now, I'm no expert in skyscraper construction processes, keep that in mind, but we're just gonna try and wing this. So I think I'm gonna use this one because it's not one of the, I mean, it is one of the tallest buildings, but it's not, you know, the tallest ones. And I don't want those to look like they're still under construction. That would implicate they would grow even taller unless they're on the very final stages of construction. So I think this one here, which is very centrally located, is a really, really good candidate. So let's open up Find It, and I'm just gonna search for crane because I've grabbed some prop versions of the construction cranes, I think from Solly's Discord, if I remember correctly. And I've grabbed some scaffolding as well. So this is going to look very, very interesting. And we're gonna kind of try and do it with these specialized skyscraper construction cranes. Now, if that sounds a little weird, it is a weird way of putting it. But basically, instead of having a full-length crane kind of travel alongside the building here, which I think would, I'm not even sure that's possible with the props I currently have actually. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna place these two larger cranes, and then I'm just going to lower them. I'll lower this one, and I'll lower this one a little less, maybe something like this. And I should probably see if I can actually get rid of the helipad. I think I can. There you go. So we've got these two cranes in place now. Now, if we were going for this archetypical Japanese look, we would colorize these as red. But that's, you know, it's not a Japanese themed city. So I think we're just gonna make them white, and hopefully they will stand out and look the part anyways. And I think the placement is kind of all right. I mean, you may only use one crane for a skyscraper building like this. You probably only would, because as you guys can see, the span of the crane is pretty much able to like service the entire footprint of the building. let's just assume in this case that they really wanted to get this slapped up fast. So they actually have 2 cranes at different heights, because then, I mean, in theory, they would be able to do it even faster. Although it would be, yeah, very complex. Anyways, we don't have to explain things. I'm just doing some detailing. Let's search for some of the scaffolding stuff I grabbed. I think this is from Harpermaster J on Sully's Discord once again. And I'm just gonna randomly be adding these because, you know, detailing options can be kind of limited. So I'm just gonna try adding some of this. It's basically just, it's an attempt to make it look realistic. And don't worry, I am going to be lowering it on a bit, lowering these props a bit, because I get it. It looks kind of weird right now. We'll place one over here as well, and then I think, just for complexity's sake, adding some a little further inwards here and just kind of lowering that as well is also just going to look really, really good. So let's see if we can just get this added as well. Yeah. So right now it looks super weird, and hopefully it's gonna look less weird if I can manage to grab these with Move It and start lowering them a bit. Oh man, I'm not really sure what I expected when trying this out, but that looks sufficiently interesting, I guess is the term I would use. If we're gonna be a little more strict about the detailing here, then I mean, I guess just using better Bulldozer to kind of remove a bit of the stuff down here and maybe adding I don't know, like some stain decals or something to the base here would make it look a little more realistic. So if we kind of add something like this to the mix, yoink. Oh, that's a surface, of course. My bad. And then plenty of like stain decals around the construction site here. And, you know, we could even add some industrial type props as well down here if that's what we wanted, just to kind of really bring this look down. You'd probably also fence this area off. I seem to remember that from walking like 6 hours a day on Manhattan, you would really get things fenced off. Let's just see if we can grab a net lane fence. Would probably be something like this, maybe. We're just gonna try this out. This is too fun. Yoink. Yeah, I mean, that's a skyscraper under construction, obviously. Well, it certainly looks interesting. That's no doubt about that. So I think we're just gonna keep it. I quite enjoy that. As a final little note, I did add a bit of detailing to Forge Point, just some decals and some of these train cars that add a ton of character. I also connected up the medium train freight yard diesel to an actual cargo train route, so we should see some freight rail here. And additionally, I made sure to service it with some of the local services, except for the rural recycling center. That's actually a local service provider I added, because it seems these industrial areas generate quite a bit of waste, so I don't want to put too much of a strain on the chowder-based services, because, you know, they're kind of at max capacity as it already is. As for the state of East Haven County as a whole, it's on 58,400, give or take, with an unemployment rate at around 7%. So definitely a pretty nice improvement during the last couple of episodes, but something we're gonna continue chipping away at. Now, I'm gonna try get this video out before Christmas, and I'm gonna try getting an additional video out before New Year's Eve, but I can't give any guarantees. So either way, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a very happy New Year's, and I want to thank you guys so much for all the support, all the nice comments and all the nice suggestions, and I'm gonna get that poll up and running, don't worry. In a few days after this video has launched, we're gonna get the poll up and running for what to do with this nice lot near the completely engulfed in flames Coal Ridge Elementary School. Yeah, let's just look the other way. I'll shoot some cinematics for you guys now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye.